Welcome back to Grounded Spirits Podcast, a place where you learn about being 100% human and 100% divine, all at the same time. We do this every week by having somebody on to share how they express themselves through their mind, body, and soul, and by learning about these three and how we can align them. That is how we're going to be able to simultaneously be human and divine. So I'm your host, Laura Lynn, and today's guest is Michelle Henderson. Michelle was a teacher, a diagnostician, and a behavior analyst for 30 years, and she is such a joy to have on. We talked about everything under the sun when it comes about her book, and definitely recommend go read her book. I'll put it in the link below. But yeah, we talk about religion and spirituality and the differences between the two and how to balance the two, how to be a Christian and still have these special gifts. We talk about students with special needs and how they a lot of times have these special gifts, or even students that don't have special needs but still have these gifts that they may or may not know how to navigate. Their parents may or may not know how to navigate. And that's what this book is. So we talk about the chakras. We talk about crystals, about how to choose one. We talk about so much that goes into this book. Like I said, it was such a great read. And yeah, wonderful to have Michelle on, and so excited for you to get to hear more about her and her story and her book and everything else. So without further ado, here's Michelle after the break. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to Grounded Spirits Podcast. So great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited about our conversation.
Me too. So you wrote this book. Amazing.
Yes.
Read it from cover to cover. And so I'd like to get into what led you to write this book. So maybe getting it more into your past of being a teacher and that journey working with children.
Oh, absolutely. And let's see, how much time do we have? No, I'll do the short version so we're not here all day. But yeah, so I guess I should start it when I was younger, because I think that we're always on the pathway. Whenever we discover something about ourselves and we want to share it, it a lot of times starts when we're younger. So I did grow up in Abilene, Texas, and it's a very, very conservative town. And I just felt like I was a little different because I was really in tune to everything. I knew what my friends were thinking. I knew what they were feeling, and I always could feel the different energies in the room. And so, when I was a very emotional child, I would cry all the time. And it's based not upon my emotions, but other people's emotions that I would bring home from school. And of course, I would try to explain this to my mom and dad, and they think, oh, it's your imagination. It's okay. Or let's not open that door. Let's, whatever. So they kind of, blew it off a little bit. And so I became very eccentric. I mean, not eccentric. So when you go inside yourself, you get really shy. I don't know where that came from. Eccentric too. What is it? What word am I looking for? When you go
Introverted?
Introverted. There you go. So I became an introvert, very shy. People thought, she doesn't talk much. And it's like, until I was an adult. But then I had a spiritual awakening in my early 20s whenever I could start hearing spirit. And I thought, I am losing my mind. I am absolutely going crazy, because I would use my intuition on an everyday basis, but then it got stronger with those voices. And so I thought, okay, I can hear them. I can't see them. What do I need to do? So I decided to go to a local psychic medium. And she really walked me through. She said, you know what? For one, you're not crazy. Number two, you're a medium. You're hearing these voices. They're wanting you to talk to you. And I said, you know what? It's scaring me right now. I don't know if I'm ready for it. I'm raising kids. I'm working. And she said, you know what? You can talk to spirit. You don't have to do it right now. So what I decided to do at that time, I was still working with my spirit team, but in a quiet way. I knew how to help the children I was working with. I knew how to advocate for them. I knew how the parents were feeling and what they were needing as well. And so, and that worked great for a while until then I started not really liking my job after a while. And, it was almost like spirit said, it's time for you to come out. Come out of the closet as a psychic medium. So this was, I mean, right before COVID. And I told my husband, I said, you know what? I think I really need to work as a spiritual teacher, spiritual leader, psychic medium. And he goes, you need to. I understand. So with that backing, I'm thinking, you know what? It's time. It's always, about the time of your life or whatever. So then I started taking classes because, during COVID, we were all shut in, couldn't do anything. You're thinking about yourself spiritually. And so I started taking classes to help really fine tune my psychic abilities. And I started meeting more and more people that would say the same thing. As a psychic child, I couldn't really talk about my abilities. I was shut down. I became depressed. I didn't know what to do. The same scenario and the same story. So one time I was meditating, and all of a sudden, I got that download from spirit, just said, you need to be an advocate for these kids. Whatever you've experienced, you experience for a reason. I knew after this download of information, I knew what needed to be in the book. I knew, from a teacher point of view, how to look at the things I learned so that a child can learn it in the same way. So, another toolbox for the parents. And so these children can actually become their unique selves and be accepted and not have to go through what all of us have gone through. So that's basically kind of the short story of how it happened. And I feel like with every conversation like this conversation, and it's almost like planting the seed for everybody. And I think
Definitely.
everybody's going, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I went through as well. And the parents that I'm teaching from these children, they kind of listen and they go, should I be afraid of it? And they're going, that's exactly what I went. I'm going through what my child is going through right now. So it's kind of like an ah moment.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that a lot of people are going through this because hearing your story, it's so similar to mine. Because I was a teacher for 6 years, and during COVID, for me, the reason why I left was that I was getting all these downloads, all of this information, and I wanted to share because I taught middle schoolers. So in middle school, you talk
Oh my
about it in the
gosh.
book. You talk about it in the book too, that in middle school they
Mhm,
alienate themselves and they
mhm.
don't know how to express themselves. And so I was getting all of this information, but as a public school teacher, I couldn't share any of this spiritual information. And so
Right,
that
right.
would just, it was so hard to like shut off a part of myself, especially going through the spiritual awakening when it's all about being your authentic self, being who you are. And in the public school system, I just couldn't do that anymore. And so now
Wow.
looking at
So,
this
oh,
book, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that's okay. I was just going to ask you that is so awesome that you could actually really, spiritually connect with your kids in middle school.
Yeah. Well, you were saying too about like I knew how to advocate for my students. I had been doing it my whole time being a teacher. But I wanted to take it a step further and I feel like I really couldn't do it. So reading your book, it really helped me like understand how I could help them in a different way. You because you even like lay out like the little parts of how to get like the intake forms and
Right,
how to
right,
really understand like what is going on with the students. So even like thinking back to some of the students that I had, obviously I can't reach out now.
right.
Well, maybe not obviously, maybe I could reach out to their parents or something. I guess it's not a complete shut door, but even just knowing that there are avenues to help students without being a teacher, but still with that same purpose of
Oh,
being a
absolutely.
teacher. So
Yes,
I
and
thought that
help
was really
guide
cool.
because a teacher, what you do as a teacher is you guide them.
Mhm.
You teach them in the knowledge, and it's the exact same thing. And it's very interesting that the case studies that I put in the book really resonate with you because I was also a behavior analyst. I worked with parents in the home. So I got a lot of that from in-home training, how to make the case studies and everything. And so that can just kind of gives you some examples of things that you can do with the kids at different ages and different
Exactly.
techniques that you can use. And the parents are getting hold of this book and they're saying, I don't need anyone teaching me. But I am so glad that that resonated with you. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, of course. And so in the without throughout the whole book, you talk about self-expression with this of the kids and how we can use art to
Mhm.
allow them to share what's going on in the spiritual realm or within their imagination. And so I was wondering if you could talk more about that, about how like you talk about the different techniques of the art within the book, but maybe like going further about their self-expression and how we can allow them to be their themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so whenever you look at art and intuitiveness, whenever you are a psychic or a highly intuitive person, you are creative. You're using that part of the brain that's very creative. Okay. It's not logical because if it was logical, then you'd be going, oh, then I'm not really in tune. You'd be thinking too logical about it. Children, when they're younger, a lot of times they don't know how to express themselves. They cannot use the words. And if we allow them to express themselves through art, through role playing, you can even use musical instruments, any way that they can express themselves and explain about their experiences and really show themselves through art, especially like a 3-year-old. If they can express what their imaginary friend looks like, they can draw it and they can kind of tell you the colors. And a 3-year-old doesn't draw that you can see, but they can at least walk you through it or a parent through it and use the different colors for expression. And it's almost like art therapy for children so that they can really express how they are feeling, so that they feel like they are being heard. And to really, this kind of leads to expressing their unique selves. So if they can show everybody who they truly are, and if they don't want to do it through art, I mean, my goodness, these children are so creative. They'll just talk about it all day long. But we need to listen. We need to listen without judgment, without fear, so that they feel like, hey, I can express this and I don't have to be fearful. I can just go ahead and just put it out there and not make people afraid so that they accept it and they'll accept me. It's almost like puzzle pieces. A kid, everybody has different puzzle pieces that make themselves into the whole puzzle piece. Well, a kid's the same way. If they're not able to show that little piece of themselves, they're going to get depressed. They're going to start self-medicating and and just not know where to turn. And they may even turn into a cult because a cult will accept them as they are. So they'll start looking for that darker energy. So that's why it is so important to really meet the child where they are.
Yeah, and I love how in your book you talk about that it's not something to fear, that you have so many different exercises of if the child is afraid, this is what we can do. And so I thought that was amazing to have that in there.
Absolutely, because you need to, and I think like anybody else, you need to feel in control. I think that's where fear comes from, is because you feel like you're out of control. And I know I was fearful when I was hearing these voices, and I'm going, oh my gosh, where are they coming from? I don't want to see anything, that kind of thing. And if the child is afraid of it, they can take different steps and put boundaries and say, I am not ready for this. And spirit will definitely, meet their needs and say, okay, it may be at a later time or never, it just depends on each person.
Mhm. And last thing about the boundaries, about teaching it at a young age will help so much, because I feel like just now I'm 30 years old and just now am I starting to learn how to set my boundaries. So I think it's great to start it off so young. So had a question here that I wanted to ask you. Oh, okay. About the correlation between the mental disorders and intuitive children. So you talked about like nonverbal kids in the book or schizophrenic kids. And so I really wanted to understand, um, like, because by myself, when I was just in the spiritual awakening, when I was hearing the voices, I did have that thought like, am I developing schizophrenia? And so like what are the differences? And like I know that I'm not now. But
Right.
it is really scary at the beginning when you are hearing all these voices and seeing these things that other people can't. So could we get into
Absolutely. And I think I'm glad you bring that up because I think for one, I think it's important for parents to, not only go to one doctor, but several doctors and try to figure out what is going on and look at it from a holistic point of view because they need to get those answers. And of course, when you go to one doctor, it may be one thing. And that's what went on with autism. There for a while until everybody was educated, we weren't really diagnosing autism correctly. Anytime a kid was nonverbal or banging their head, we'd say, okay, that's someone with autism. But yet, if they could talk, but they didn't have social skills, was that one's not autism when it actually is. So, to answer your question about schizophrenia, they have done research, and I found it fascinating, where they did a study with a medium, psychic medium, and then patients that actually were diagnosed with schizophrenia, okay, and other disorders. And the medium looked at listening to voices and interacting with the voices as very spiritual, very, wonderful thing happening in an interaction. And they could actually turn it off. They could have those boundaries. And so I can turn it off and I don't have to hear it anymore. And that's without medication, of course. And then the people that are truly schizophrenic, they can't turn it off. They feel like their life's in danger at all times. The voices tell them to do something evil, about themselves, hurt themselves, or hurt other people. So it's a total different process in the brain. And they even did some research and they scanned the brain and everything. So it comes from almost the same area of the brain, but the schizophrenia behavior is a lot different.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
a lot of
a
sense.
lot of our kids also get diagnosed with ADHD because they're so hyper and they have all this energy and they don't know what to do with it. And it's okay to be diagnosed with ADHD, but it's the way that you approach to help your child, the different techniques and the behavior techniques that can be used instead of going to that medicine all of a sudden. There's other ways you can also look at helping a child that way.
Yeah, definitely. And then going back to autism, and then you talked about that they could be communicating telepathically. And I thought that was
Yes.
incredible.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
could we learn as people who work with children, could we learn to get on that wavelength to be able to communicate, or is it something that they just have that they can only communicate with other people who are also nonverbal, or what do you think that
Oh,
that
that's a wonderful question. I mean, they could reach out to you. An autistic child could reach out to you telepathically. However, you may not be able to receive it. So you need to know how to receive it. What I did in the very beginning is I would work with energy and I would get my aura, my energy to go towards the child, especially to calm them down when they're having meltdowns. And I would get my energy and try to get them to calm down. And I could see the child just calming down, and then I also could feel their anger also. Um, but telepathically, you really have to know how to receive it. And that just practice with different exercises, like you could practice with a friend, say, okay, think of one word and let me see if I can come up with that one word. Or, those pictures that they put in an envelope and somebody looks at that picture
hmm
and they picture it in their mind. So you can strengthen those abilities as well. But you have to know how to receive that telepathic message from a child. Now, a lot of times it wasn't words that I was hearing, it was more of a feeling of what I knew what they were needing. And I got to tell you one more thing about this. When working with children with autism, they tend to look off in the distance. they're looking like at the corner of the room, and they start laughing, and they're just like having a great time. And you're going, what are you seeing? And I'd always say, what are you laughing at? And they'd look at me and start laughing again. And I'd say, okay, tell that person to go away so that you can get back to work. So they can see things, and I also feel like they can see the different earth grids, energy grids, geometric energy on our earth as well, because
Wow.
their energy is so high that they can do that. So it's
Yeah.
just fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating, like how we as humans we have so many different abilities that we don't tap into. And so it's so cool that these kids that have autism or one of the other ones that they have these abilities. So I think that's so cool. That reminded me, I'm like trying to find the page now in your book of you listed in one of like the intake forms of like a bunch of
Mhm.
different abilities. And
Yes.
without reading it, I didn't, it's like, wow, like people actually have these, and now I can't find it. But there was one about, oh, here we go. About,
Page 14.
yeah.
Is that the one? Yeah.
Yeah, page 14. About, which one was it? About the, now I lost it. I thought I had marked it in here, but I guess I hadn't. But it was just really cool that there are so many behaviors that your child could have. And so, my question is when was what was your first reaction when you saw some of these abilities in your students or the kids that you worked with, when you were a behavioral analyst? Like, what was your first reaction before, or maybe it was after your spiritual awakening or before, but without knowing, how did you make the connection between that this is what it was? Does that make sense?
Exactly what you just said. While I was doing research for the book, that's when I remembered about the telepathic connection that I had with the children. That's when I went, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened. And I feel like I was led to the research that I found so that I could make that connection.
Mm.
So a lot, yeah. So a lot of these connections, I was just going, oh, I would have never thought about that either. But that's how I started connecting. And also I saw my own behaviors as a child. And then I also saw some of my own children had some of these behaviors and characteristics.
Wow, that's incredible. That's another part that I loved about your book was I before I started the podcast and did all of this, I was in a PhD for education. And so in my PhD, it's all about like going to the research and getting all of that. And then when I started this spiritual path, there aren't that many books that take a research based approach. And so that's one of the
Right.
reasons that I loved this book, because it was like a perfect meld of the research base that I'm used to from the PhD program,
Oh,
and
right.
then all of like the spirituality. So it was so cool that, like you mentioned it earlier too, with like the brain scans, like there is research out there that the
Mhm.
public just does not know about. So it was so cool to have it in your book, and it was so nice to read your book. It wasn't overly technical, where
Right.
I
Right.
could pick everything up, and it'd be perfect for a teacher, or anybody else who works with kids or parents to read a section and then implement it, and then read another
Right.
section and use it as needed. So that was incredible. So I'd like
Yeah, I
to
was
get,
definitely looking from an educator point of view.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely
And you
amazing.
did you notice the color pages in the very back too of it?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
was
and
gonna.
that's, for the teacher and me. I thought
Mhm.
they need some worksheets too to complete some
Yeah.
of these exercises.
Especially I want to get into like the chakra one, and I love this one too about your protection shield.
Yes.
Incredible. So
Right.
with the chakras,
Right.
this is more of like a spiritual like kind of question. Do you believe that when children are born, do they already have their chakras aligned, or is it that we're constantly, no matter what time of our lives, are we constantly trying to balance them?
Oh, absolutely love that. Now, there is a philosophy that talks about when a child is 1 year old, they're actually working on different areas of the chakra, that they're learning lessons to help balance it. So, but that's a very good question. I mean, but that's just based on the research that I had. But my opinion originally, my first thought while you were talking was saying, you know what? They came from the spiritual world. That would mean that their chakras would be balanced, right?
Yeah.
But they're here to learn as well. So, and if you believe in reincarnation, you know that, we continue our lessons into the next life. So our chakras may look the same as the previous life when we left it.
That's such a great take
I
to.
don't know why that just came to me.
Oh, yeah, that is.
So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. This is gonna take me some time to really think about it, but wow. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Is
Yeah.
also talking about the chakras with I love how you had like the chart of at this age, between these ages, you're working on this and at
That's
these ages.
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
and it was
And you oh
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say yes. And that is just now that chart is only up to age 7. There's a huge chart that goes through age 49 that you can find on the web. If you just put in that philosophy that I don't think I could even pronounce it on the air. So,
You mentioned
but
it
if you,
briefly though in the
yeah,
book.
and it's just right. And it's just the ages 1 through 7. But each year, even after that, it goes to a different chakra. But you can find a larger chart on the web. And it's just fascinating. And it's absolute, it's a philosophy that's been around for a long centuries after centuries.
Yeah, and so it like really spoke to me because at the end of each little section, it's on page 29. You say
Oh,
that
29. Okay.
it's developed like for the heart chakra, the chakra is developed from the ages 21 to 28. And so like I said, I'm 30. And so the throat chakra is the one that I'm working on. And it was so amazing to see that because I really feel like I have been working on the throat chakra since I was 29. And
Yes.
that's like how this
Yes.
podcast came about, was about expressing myself using my throat chakra.
Oh my gosh.
And it was
Yes.
just really special to read that, and then to now like talking about like self-expression. And now that's
Mhm.
when I emailed you, I told you that like I kind of shifted the perspective of the podcast into more of looking at the expression part of
Oh,
expressing our
right.
soul and expressing who we are. Um, and
Right.
so how do you could you talk a little bit about how you work through your throat chakra and to be able to decide to, because you said it's so cool that your husband was supportive, but that still must have been
Oh, yeah.
scary to do a complete career shift. So could you talk a little about
Absolutely. And I will say I am still working on that throat chakra and speaking my truth. And it's so interesting because I feel like I've been really working on my heart chakra and my throat chakra. I've been trying to speak my truth, but then there's some situations that come up and go, oh, I thought it had it, 100% there, but I found out I don't. But yeah, so when I first came out as a psychic medium, you feel so vulnerable. I was speaking my truth and I was scared to death. I thought people are going to hate me. They're going to run away from me when they see me coming. And you know what? Let me tell you a little story. Okay. So whenever I came out, I made my own business on Facebook and I thought, I'm going to go Facebook Live and go live on my Facebook page. And so I did. And I started seeing these names. I'm going, that's on my personal page. I'm not on my business page. So I came out Facebook and I'm thinking Spirit has something in store for me. So yeah, so I was on my personal page. After I was done with that episode, I had 2 or 3 people from my church call me and they go, can you give me a reading? I want to schedule a reading. So you just never know when you speak your truth, what kind of support you're going to have. And so that kind of got me going in the right direction. And it is scary. Sometimes when I introduce myself to people though for the first time and they go, "Oh, what do you do?" That's when it's difficult. And it's still hard. And I always say, "Well, I'm a spiritual advisor," which I am. And if they want to know more, then I always say, "Well, I'm a psychic medium." And then just kind of go up because you know what? They're in my life for such a short amount of time. If they don't want to support me or if they're not on my energy level, it's okay. They're on their own journey. I'm not going to judge where they are. If they judge me, it's okay. We're just on different journeys.
Thank you so much for sharing that story because I would be terrified. I would have been like, end it right now. But it's so cool that it ended up being positive that you were able to attract the right people. So I feel like that's
Right.
what counts. And I love that you mentioned your church because you talk about it in the book too, about the differences between spirituality and religion. So could you get a little into
Mhm.
that?
Oh, absolutely. Now, spirituality, there's so many different definitions in that. And of course, with my definition, you just know that there's something greater than yourself. And a lot of times it is not a part of the religion, but it depends on who you are. Some people say, I'm religious and spiritually in my church. But a lot of people like to separate it. And because to be spiritual, you don't have to be religious. And you're not doing anything wrong if you're not going to a certain church. I was religious growing up, but I was missing something. I knew God was loving. My God was loving. Jesus and I had a great relationship, and I'm thinking, why is everybody so afraid of him? I mean, he is my friend,
Yes,
And
exactly.
and whenever I became more spiritual, and I mean, this was when I was a teenager. I started reading all these books how to be more spiritual. I'm going, this is absolutely me. And so I tend to keep it separate, but some people don't. But again, being spiritual, I can actually find myself. And to me, it's so much more accepting. And there is a place for church and there's a place for spirituality as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It's such a joy talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
and I think to me, it is so important. Talk about children. They need some type of spirituality in their life. They may not have religion, but they need to know that there's something greater than themselves because, they're having spiritual experiences. They need to know that. And
Mhm.
they need to know that is love and light that's coming through. And there's just so much, awe out there that we don't really know about.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that you said that you can have both. You can be spiritual and religious too, because I feel like sometimes it's so separated where it's either you can't just believe that you can't be a Christian and believe that you have these like witchy powers kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah, and no. And to me, God gave you those powers, okay?
Mhm.
God made you how you are. So what if you call it source, whatever, you were made for who you were and the purpose of who you are. But yeah, so and I mean I still go to church. I still wear a cross because that is a part of me and that's my relationship with Jesus, and that's a part of me. But the other part of me is also being a psychic medium and being spiritual and healing people and just seeing how God can help me heal others.
Love that, yeah. I feel like God really does use us to help
Hmm.
others and to heal others, even sometimes without us realizing it, just by being ourselves.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's why I'm so strong about self-expression and being your authentic self, because when you're being yourself, God will use you to help everybody else, or in certain situations where it's not taking from you, it's just allowing you to express yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so are you ready to play some games now?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. So I
Awesome.
just answer whatever comes to mind quickly.
Yep. So it's the
Okay,
word
I'm
association.
ready. Okay.
So the first word is trauma.
Oh, so did I tell you an explanation or?
Whatever comes to mind. It could be one word, one
Okay.
sentence, a little story. I know I started off a hard one.
Oh, no, that's good. That's good. Okay. Healing.
Interestingly enough, the next one was healing.
Okay. I feel like when you heal, you knock those barriers down and learn more about yourself.
You're just going right into the next one. The next one is authenticity.
Okay. Well, I mean, it all kind of goes together. Um, Showing people who you truly are, speaking your truth.
Psychic.
Ooh. Um, oh, and touch with your soul and soul of others.
That is the best definition I've ever heard in my life. That's amazing.
Oh,
The
good.
next one is teacher.
Hmm. Oh, okay. Guiding and letting go of your students so that they can become themselves.
That's incredible too. Now I'm thinking about it because sometimes like you do want to hold on to them because you feel like they've grown so much. Because I've taught every grade from kindergarten to eighth grade, and so like my little first graders, that was my hardest class to let go of because we had just gotten so close
Uh-huh.
together. And but you're right, by letting them go, then they're able to then go to second grade and learn so much more. So that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
that's it for the word association. So now the next one is a this or that.
Okay.
So do you think, so just this or that, have a daily mindfulness practice, or a daily journaling practice?
Oh, daily journaling practice.
Okay. And then the would you rather is, would you rather only ever read spiritual books or only ever listen to spiritual podcasts?
Hmm. Books, spiritual books.
I agree. Even though
Because
we
you,
both have
you
podcasts.
can, you can dive, yeah, you can dive more into books than a podcast. You can't, it's already recorded a lot of times and you can't ask questions. But if it's a book, you can dive more into it.
Oh, that's good. Well, the reason I chose books was because I feel like with a podcast, it's amazing how it's live basically, that whatever comes out of my mouth, that's what comes out. Whereas a book, it takes more time to like do the research and to then like put together the perfect words. So I feel like there's like more um like it's more put together in a way. So
Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
really love
No, I
the
agree.
books part. Mhm.
Yeah.
And like for me, I also write with my teacher skills. I write guided journals, and so I use like them as like lesson plans as if I were to actually teach it, but then it's for the person to do it themselves. And so I feel like by doing those spiritual books, they're able to dive deeper into themselves.
Yes. I could totally agree.
Yeah. So that's it for our games. So now I
Oh,
wanted to get back into your book and talking about your soul connection to it. So you talked a little bit about it at the beginning when you were saying that that spirit led you to be an advocate for intuitive children. But I looked it up on Amazon. There really aren't any other books. So are you planning on writing more books about it, or what are your future plans?
I love that question. I've been asked that before. I'm just going to see what happens, and if I'm guided to write another book, I will. I know that the editor and the publisher that was helping me, they both said you need to write a second book to kind of back up what you wrote in this first one. So I think right now what I'm mainly doing is seeing how it's going to help everybody and how everybody's receiving it so that I can help guide them to the next step,
Oh,
if that
that's
makes any
nice.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Um,
And then that way, and what my publisher said at first, she said, you may want to take it because it was really meant for, people to help the parents. And again, the parents are going, I can do this on my own. My publisher was saying, you know what you need to do is write another book from a parent point of view.
Mm, yeah,
So
that
we'll
would be
see.
cool. Yeah.
We'll see what spirit has in store.
Well, talking about spirit and writing a new book, you talked a little bit about it as an exercise for the kids on allowing spirit to take over when drawing or
Mhm.
telling a story. And so I wanted to
Right.
know if you had a little bit of that process where you let it let spirit take over, because in my first book, some of the times I feel like I was just channeling spirit, like my fingers are just on the keyboard. And then
Right.
now rereading my book, there's so much that I missed. And I'm like, how did I possibly miss that if I'm the one that wrote it? But
Right.
maybe it's like
Right.
with a new lens, but I really believe that my book was channeling spirit. So I wanted to know your perspective as an author.
Oh, absolutely. And you're feeling guided. And I know a lot of people when they hear the word channeling, it's fear. A lot of people go, what do you mean you're out of control? And it's not like you're out of control. You're just letting God, spirit, whatever, guide you. They're not like possession, taking over your body or anything. But yeah, so channeling can take different forms. Like did you hear a voice whenever you were writing? Or did you just write?
Yeah, so what I read, you said that in the book too, and I was trying to remember. And
Yeah.
I don't think that it was a voice, because I do hear like spirit talk to me like as an actual voice a lot of the
Right.
time. But when I was writing, I really feel like it was through my fingers that
Yes.
it was
Yes.
it was like exactly how you described it. It wasn't like possession, like I was still in control of my fingers, but
Yeah.
it was just like leading me to write. I don't know how to explain it.
Yes. And it's almost like you felt into it. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And yes. And because I feel like we have a spirit team, and you probably have a writer that comes in to help you, a spirit team member that knows how to write, because and then they'll leave after you write the book. So somebody told me that I had an artist among me that would help me with my art, but would probably not stay with me much longer. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Interesting.
So you always have a spirit team that will help you. But yeah, how I do it is I hear the voices and I can, write down what I'm hearing. And sometimes whenever I'm doing psychic art, I know exactly what I need to do with the paint.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That just reminded me of another exercise that you had where you close your eyes and pick a color, and then you put
Yes.
the
Yes.
sheet on top, and then I'm so excited to try that. I
Oh,
haven't
good. Yeah,
yet,
yeah.
but
That's one exercise that I love to do as well. I actually painted the main spirit guide. I didn't know it at the time. I'm going, who is this guy? And then I figured it out later. That was my spirit
wow,
guide.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you do
So
talk
you
a
just
little
never
bit.
know what comes.
Yeah. And you talk about
I'm sorry.
spirit
Go ahead.
guides in
Yeah.
the book. But could you get more into spirit guides? Because I feel like I know that they're different entities that I'm hearing when I hear the voices, but I guess I haven't identified them as a spirit team. So, and then right now you mentioned that they come and go. So are there few that always stay, or could you just talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So you do have a spirit guide that stays with you throughout your whole entire life. Okay. And what I've heard is that it is somebody that you've known from life to life, somebody who has actually lived on this earth. Okay. And there's some people who have angels, well, we all have angels, but some people will have different entities from different dimensions as a spirit guide as well. And yeah, some spirit guides come and go depending upon what lessons you need help with. Now, they'll guide you, but they won't tell you how to do something.
Okay.
So, like, if you're wanting an answer, you can always ask, should I be doing this? Can you give me an answer? Give me a sign, and they will definitely help you. But you always have to ask for it, but they will only guide you. But yeah, I've heard that most of the times. Oh, and also you'll have family members like a grandfather who will stay with you, for a little bit, and then he'll go off and come back, to be your spirit guide.
That's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Oh
didn't I
yeah,
didn't know.
you're not ever alone. People
Yeah.
think that they're alone. They are never alone. And I also read somewhere that children who have special needs have extra angels around them to protect them.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you also talk about, like, for protection now, about the crystals and
Yes.
how the children should pick their crystals and that'll also protect them. Um, so with the crystals, you mentioned a few of them in there, but could we go a little bit more into the power behind the crystals, and are they when they how do I put it? When we have a connection with the crystal to choose it to that one's ours, are we also being led by spirit, or is it the crystal, and do they have their own kind of like entity where they're trying to connect with us?
Oh, I love that answer. Okay. So whenever you connect with a crystal, you are the one that's connecting with it. Okay. Because you've got your own energy and your soul is connecting with it. Your energy actually knows what type of crystal you need so that it can balance you.
Wow.
Okay. And so that's why you always have to have somebody pick out their own crystals, because they will be led, because every crystal has different energy on it. And there's actually an exercise that you can do. You stand up straight, you put the crystal, okay, in your non denominating hand. So if you're right handed, put it in your left hand, and then put your right hand underneath it. Put it kind of next to your stomach area, and stand up. If you go backwards, because you'll feel lightheaded from a crystal. And if you go backwards, it means that you need that crystal to help balance your life and with your chakras and everything. If you stay still, it means that you don't need that crystal.
Wow,
Does
that's
that make
incredible.
sense?
Yeah, yeah. Just like
So it
honestly,
really
that's
depends
so
upon the
cool.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible because I feel like there's a new movie that just came out called Strange World. It's on Disney Plus, and I'm gonna ruin
Oh, I
the,
gotta watch it. Okay.
I'm gonna ruin it. Should I ruin it, or should I just talk about it without ruining it?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead
Okay.
and run it. It's okay. I'll watch it.
Okay. Well, they go into this inside of this like weird world. So it's like the inside of their world. So like if it was Earth, it's like the inner Earth kind of thing. But in this inner Earth,
Okay.
everything's alive. So like all the plants, all the rocks, everything's alive. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
thinking about crystals in this physical realm, it's kind of like they also have their own aliveness by having that energy.
Mhm.
But is it
Right.
that, or is it just that everything has energy, whether it's a crystal or like this microphone, does
Oh, yeah.
everything have an energy?
Everything does have energy, right? But crystals are from the earth. And so they have energy, stronger energy than just like my microphone would have energy. So,
Okay.
but yes, everything has energy, but crystals, just where because they came from the earth, they've been mineralized and everything else. That's why everybody just loves them.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
Okay. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Okay.
I
Okay.
we had such a great conversation that there's just so much to think about and talk about,
Oh, I
and
know.
so you have
Yes.
just been so amazing to answer all my questions, even though as I'm saying them, they don't. It's I like stumble over my words because there's just so much that wants to come out.
Oh, that's okay. No, I can actually feel your excitement.
Oh,
And
good.
you can tell that you're excited about learning all of this new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's crazy is that I've been on this spiritual journey now for 2 years, and I still feel like I'm a beginner. I still feel like this is just the beginning, that there's so much more to learn.
Where you know what though, dear, you said that we're all beginners. We're all learning. If you ever meet somebody that says, "Oh, I know everything," run away. So we never learn everything. And so what you need to do is on your journey, just learn what you need to learn and not what other people are learning and
Yeah.
what you're drawn to.
And that's a perfect way to wrap everything up, because it goes back to expressing our true selves. Because if we're hiding or trying to be somebody else, then the different energies are going to come to us that don't resonate with us. So once again, it's
Love it.
important to be our true self. So thank you so much. I just looked at the time and it's already a whole hour. So um
I know it's crazy. I know once you start talking about something that really interests you, it's like, wow, where'd the hour go?
yeah, I feel like it's
Well,
only been
thank
10
you so
minutes.
much. I
Yeah, thank
appreciate this
you.
conversation totally. So
Me
thank you so
too.
much.
Thank you. If you like to
Thank
say a
you.
few words about where people can find you.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I always send people to my website. So it's www.michellehendersonmedium.com. And I have classes. I talk about my different services. Everything can be found there.
All right, awesome. And the last question I have for you is, how do you have a tip on how to be more of a grounded spirit?
How to be just like what we're talking about. Be yourself, be your unique self, show people who you are, and your soul will shine. And people will know that you're showing your true self that way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, my dear.
And that's it. Thanks again to Michelle for coming on to the show. Like I said earlier, it was amazing to have her. It literally felt like it was 10 minutes, and I feel like we covered so much. And it was just like cool to have somebody with a similar background, with like the whole teacher thing, but also with the whole like borderline of like Christian witch kind of stuff. Like that's like what I used to refer to myself as when I started this podcast, and I've felt like I was like drifting away from Christianity and seeing different sides, but for some reason I always circle back to focusing on like the Holy Trinity. So not necessarily like everything that Christianity has to offer, but I feel like you just kind of take what resonates and leave the rest. And what I can't figure out is, and then that's a lie. I feel like I only subscribe to Christianity because it's what I grew up with and it's because what I know, instead of having to like learn a whole new religion, like if I were to go and read like the Quran or something. So I feel like that has something to do with it. I just feel like I know more about Christianity, but it was just really cool to get the perspective of another Christian when it comes to also being a medium and having these intuitive powers. So it was just amazing to hear Michelle's side of it. To know more about how like exactly what I think about like Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit, you can go to groundedspirits.com/episodes, and on my last week's episode post on my blog, I talk about the 5 key lessons that I learned in 2022, and I end up like going really deep into like what I believe God really is, what Jesus really is, and what the Holy Spirit really is, and like why they're he's instead of she's, and having like that whole thing. I go like really in depth with that in the midst of my 5 key lessons, which are also really good, I feel. So definitely go and check that out. It was from last week. And in this week's episode with Michelle, I'm gonna be posting the key takeaways from this talk. So you can go check that out on groundedspirits.com/episodes. For more information about Michelle, I'll also have it there on the post on my website, but it'll also be, the link to that will be in the description, and I'll also have the link to her book in the description as well as on the website. So you can definitely go and find her, as well as going to her website that she mentioned at the end of when she was on with me. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath right now because I am just so sick. Just started today, have a sore throat, so I'm like trying to like catch my breath. But yeah, I really enjoyed, like I said, meeting with Michelle, but hopefully you liked it as well. And if you did like it or something resonated with you, I would really, really appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcast and give this podcast 5 stars and tell a friend about it. I feel like it's only going to get better from here. I'm just like really excited about, I feel like kind of like an investigator, just like unearthing how people express themselves and like what does it really mean to be human? What does it really mean to be divine? And instead of trying to figure out what side's what, just like how can we meld the two where we don't even have to have the distinction, that we can just be, because we're human beings, not human doings, not human tryings, not human. There was one I thought about the other day and now I can't remember it, but I think it's like practicing or something. I'm not sure. But we're human beings, and so I just want to be able just to be me and to just be able to express myself fully. So I hope that even if you're not on a self-expression journey, that you do learn something from each of our guests about how to express yourself just a little bit more. How can we dig a little deeper and uncover something about ourselves that we can share into the world? So with that, I leave you. Do something creative today. Allow that spirit inside of you to break free. Learn something new about yourself. I just saw this thing about not only having the ability to create, and that also that we're made in God's image and God is a creator, and so that makes us creators too. Like I was like, whoa. But then that God gives us these ideas because they need to be out in the open. They need to exist. And in this case, when I'm saying God, I'm talking more about the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is all around us. And I talk more about this on that blog post that I was just talking about. But it's just really beautiful that the Holy Spirit, we talk a little bit about it in this episode. And then I say that so much. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. But there's just so much to talk about today. But yeah, the Holy Spirit leads us to create, just like the Holy Spirit led me to write Monterey and Michelle to write her book. It's a little bit of a long title, but it's called Spiritual Nurturing for Intuitive Children. We never specifically said it, so I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, I will have it linked below as well. But that's Spiritual Nurturing for Intuitive Children. And yeah, so like the whole point is that allow the Holy Spirit to come into you and to allow you to create something new today. After all, we are aspiring change-making creatives here, and hopefully you're an aspiring change-making creative as well. So with that, I'll leave you, and next week, let me tell you a little bit about him. So next week, his name is Noah Healy, and he's a mathematician. And so we're going to get into that whole thing. We're going to talk about game theory. We're going to get into market design and economic systems. We're going to talk about tech startups and all of that and how we can express ourselves. Because I feel like when you think about expressing yourself, you don't really think about math. And so it's going to be super interesting to understand like where he's coming from with this. And yeah, it'll be really cool. So stay tuned for next week. Again, everything's going to be in the link below. And check out the website for more about Michelle, for more about me. You can also find me at It's Laura Lynn on Instagram, actually anywhere on Wisdom, the app. Anywhere. So connect with me and see you next week. Bye, everybody.